Hi guys, welcome back to another term of CU, DGs, public forums, whatever they are these days. It's good to be back. And I'm going to start with this question. How often do you think about the return of Jesus? You might never think about it. You might think it's a weird question. But some of you might think it's a good question. Do you ever think about it? Do you ever think he'll return in your lifetime, for example? Or do you always think, it's just a long way off. If he returns, it won't be in my lifetime. He'll return sometime. But also, what impact should that reality have on us now? So, will he return? Do you ever think about that? When will he return? Do you ever think about that? And so what if he'll return? What impact should it have on us now? Well, in the Bible, the future is a motivation for faithful discipleship in the here and now. The future kind of pulls us along as much as the past pushes us along. We've got this push and pull dynamic going on. So it's actually important to consider the future and how it shapes the present. So we're going to jump into 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 in a moment, but remember some context. Remember that Paul wrote this letter because he wanted to express his joy at the fact that the Thessalonians, well, he discovered that the Thessalonians were doing well. They'd only just become Christians in a hostile culture, and he found out that they were going strong. In chapters 1 through 3, Paul recounts what they all know of each other so that they can build trust and affection. And then in chapter 4, he turns to the matters that they need some further instruction on. Because, we all need further instruction and encouragement. And basically, it's that whole area of holiness. Remember what God's will is for your life. Chapter 4, verse 3, it's your holiness or your sanctification. Okay, and this theme of holiness dominates the last 3 chapters, I think. And we'll see it emerge again today. In terms of the immediate context, Paul has just described the Lord's return in chapter 4, verse 13 through 18. He talked about what will happen when Jesus returns, in general terms. And that is an encouragement, right? The encouraging fact that we'll be with each other and the Lord forever. Because Jesus died and rose again. Everything's built on what Jesus did. And so he's talked about what will happen when Jesus returns, and now he turns to the natural question of when. When will he return? When will Jesus return to complete his salvation project? And Paul basically says, well, we don't know when. We don't know when. So just be ready all the time. Yeah? Have a look. Point 1 is Jesus will return unexpectedly. Chapter 5, verse 1. Now, brothers and sisters, about times and dates we do not need to write to you. For you know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. Right? Only really dumb thieves ring you up to make an appointment. Hey, just let us know when you're not going to be there. Is Wednesday the 5th at about 7 okay? Yep, good, you're not going to be there. That's when we'll rob. Thanks, bye. No, thieves strike unawares. They don't plan it. They don't book it in the diary. You don't know when they're going to strike. And that's the point. The day of the Lord will come suddenly, unexpectedly, like a thief in the night. Day of the Lord is Old Testament language for the end of the world moment, the cataclysmic moment when God intervenes to judge and save humanity at the end of time. And it says that Jesus will bring this day, and he'll bring it without any warning. You see it in verse 3. While people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly as labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. People will be going about their daily business. They'll be shopping, they'll be commuting to work, they'll be playing footy, they'll be walking down the street. And then suddenly, without warning, judgment will come. And Paul compares it to labor pains. Now, I've seen this happen 3 times in my time with my wife. And it's been the same every time. You got rough understanding of, in 9 months, but you just don't know. And you don't know when the first contraction will start, and you don't know when, the baby will emerge. 1 hour you're fine, then suddenly the contractions begin and bam, there's a baby coming. It comes suddenly upon us. That's the point. And this whole idea that Jesus will come suddenly and unexpectedly for judgment kind of makes life serious, right? This isn't just a game. It's not a rehearsal. We've got one chance in life to kind of get it right. Most of us get a good chance at it too. We get a lot of years to think through the fact that we should stop ignoring God and turn to Jesus and trust in him. And we should do that before it's too late, before either two things happen. Either we die or Jesus returns. And both of those things, our death and Jesus' return for the day of the Lord, both of those things are unpreventable and unpredictable. Now, if our death and God's judgment are both unpreventable and unpredictable, the wise thing to do, what do you reckon? It's to be ready all the time. It's not to put it off. It's to make a clear decision and to respond and be ready. And the way to respond and be ready, we've already seen it in chapter 1, verse 9 and 10. That the Thessalonians turned to God from idols to serve the living and true God and to wait for his Son from heaven, whom he raised from the dead, Jesus, who delivers us from the wrath to come. Now, this notion of Jesus returning suddenly to judge the world should not surprise or worry Christians. Because of who we are and what we know, I suppose. Well, that's what the passage says anyway. And this is my second point. Those who are children of the light need not worry about the day of the Lord. Those who are children of the light need not worry about the day of the Lord. You see that in verse 4. But you, brothers and sisters, you're not in darkness, so that this day should surprise you like a thief. The reason Judgment Day shouldn't surprise you is because you don't belong to the darkness. Rather, you are children of the light and the day. You see verse 5. You're all children of the light and children of the day. We do not belong to the night or to the darkness. Okay? Just look at this distinction he's making here. We're children of the light and the day, therefore we belong to the light and the day. That's a metaphor for salvation, being right with God forever. We don't belong to the night or the darkness, which is a metaphor for being in rebellion against God and under his judgment. You see, this is all about knowing who you are, knowing your identity and where you belong. I'm a child of God and I belong in his eternal family of light. And so I'm not surprised by the coming day of judgment. I know that it is coming. He's revealed that plan to me. And I'm ready for it because I'm safe. I don't have to fear God's judgment. You see that in verse 9, down in verse 9. For God did not appoint us to suffer wrath, but to receive salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. He died for us so that whether we are awake or asleep, we may live together with him. So this passage goes on to say, be who you are. Be the identity that you are, the child of the light. Live consistently with your identity. Okay? So this is point 3. Be who you are. Live out your identity as a child of the light in the here and now as you wait. All right? Since we're in the light, don't live like you're in the dark. All right? Bring the values of that future kingdom that has begun in the resurrection of Jesus, bring the values of that kingdom into the present and live out those values. You see it in verse 6. So then, verse 6, let us not be like others who are asleep, but let us be awake and sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be sober, putting on faith and love as a breastplate, and the hope of salvation as a helmet. Okay, so in short, since we belong to the day, stay awake and live for Jesus. Right? You don't go to sleep during the day. I mean, some of us have nano naps, I know, but generally you're awake during the day. So be awake because you're living in the day in the kingdom of light. Sleeping is for people in the night or the darkness. Now, he's used sleep a few times in the letter. Earlier, he used the metaphor of sleep to refer to Christians who had died. But now he uses it differently. He uses sleep to mean those who are ignoring God and God's ways. And those who are awake are the opposite. They're not ignoring God. They have a relationship with God. They're alive to God. And they're alert to his good ways and walking in those ways. In verse 7, those who are of the night and so asleep to God, they get drunk. But in contrast, verse 8, those who are of the day and alive, they're sober-minded, they're clear and alert, and therefore they live lives of faith, hope, and love. One group ignores God's will and lives for themselves. The other group pays attention to God and lives for him. Here's the question: which group are you in? Would we know by the way you're living which group you're in? Who are you and where do you belong? Does your lifestyle bring evidence to that? The encouragement here is to be in the light, to be awake and alert, living for Jesus as you await his return. And what that looks like in verse 8 is faith, love, and hope. It's referred to as armor because it helps us fight the fight of living for Jesus in a struggling reality. The three things that he's also already praised God for in chapter 1, verse 3. Faith, which means relying on Jesus' death for us and on God's promises for us. Love, which is how we respond to salvation in sacrificial service. And hope, which is the certain future of resurrection life and perfect community that encourages us to persevere onwards. And he ends the note on that. He ends on the note of future hope by reminding us in verse 9 that God did not appoint us to suffer wrath, but to receive salvation. And verse 10, he died for us so that whether we're awake or asleep, we may be living together with him. The future is good for those who trust in and follow Jesus. Salvation and life is ours. Being with God is ours, not judgment. Why? Because Jesus died for us. So we don't need to worry or stress about the day of the Lord. Now, given everything Paul has said here in this passage, can you see why he finishes with the appropriate verse 11, therefore? Therefore encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. Encourage one another, because we are the children of light, awaiting salvation and life rather than judgment. And so that's encouraging. And we can encourage each other to be who we are, to be children of light, and to live out that identity in living lives of holiness, in standing firm in faith, love, and hope, rather than slacking off and just living the way of the dark world around us. Now, some of us need gentle reminders and encouragements about this truth. Others of us need a more kind of robust encouragement, a bit of a bomb put under us to say, wake up! This is serious business. Stop living the way of the world. Stop living the way of the darkness. Remember who you are in Christ. Remember what you've been saved from, what you've been saved for, what you're looking forward to, and how to get on with serving God while you wait now. Lives of faith, love, and hope. Well, that's 1 Thessalonians 5, 1-11. In a nutshell, I could go on, you know me, but I won't. I'll stop there. It's now your turn to encourage one another, verse 11, to live as children of the light while we wait for our ultimate experience of salvation on that last day. Amen.